Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It's time for a brand new weekly show with me, Ange Musgrove, and him, Sam Mulliner, simply titled The Mulliner and Musgrove Show. Now, that doesn't give too much away, ladies and gents, about the purpose of this new series. So let me tell you a bit more about it. Every Tuesday, all being well, Sam and I will bring you an episode dedicated to the hottest talking points of the weekend's football just gone. We'll cover a few topics within the episode and share our view, and hopefully you will get involved as well. It is, as always, sponsored by NordVPN. You know what to do by now. If you want your discounted NordVPN plan, hit the link in the podcast description box. Make sure you hit thumbs up on YouTube and share the pod across all of your social media channels. Your support is appreciated, as always. Shall we get on with it? Sam, welcome back. How are you? Excited for your new outing?
Yeah. I mean, every Tuesday, all being well, I do have a job. So, if you want to dictate where I am every week, then by all means, put me on the payroll. But yeah, it's good. This is the difficult third album, isn't it? After the roaring success of whatever the other two are called.
Yeah, the other two series we had Just Take 3, which was based around being stranded on a desert island. And then we also had Get in the Bin, which we may bring back at some point once we've had a long enough break from them both and we've come up with new topics to either put in the bin or take with us on a desert island. But we thought with this episode, there's always plenty to talk about aside from Newcastle United. And this is obviously a Newcastle United podcast, and the majority of the content will continue to be Newcastle United. But we just thought we'd offer something a little bit different. And hopefully, as I say, you will get involved in the comments. And we have a lot of talk about this in this episode because it's been one of those weekends where there hasn't just been one kind of talking point. There's been several of them. So I want to start with the fact that Newcastle United's defeat to Bournemouth was made a little bit worse, Sam, because we had Elliot Anderson grabbing his first goal for Nottingham Forest, and then we had Yankuba Minteh getting a goal and an assist against Man United for Brighton. So that kind of just added salt to the wounds, didn't it?
A little bit, yeah, but I get that people are frustrated with this transfer window and indeed the last three transfer windows. But at the end of the day, we really don't want to be in that position again that we were last summer, where we have to sell two of our really good, young, talented players. It was great to see Elliot Anderson finally get a Premier League goal. I thought one was coming for us towards the back end of last season. It's a shame both of those players would have got their fair share of minutes for the first team this season, particularly probably Minteh on that right wing. Look, it is a big shame. We know full well that no one really wanted them to be sold, but this is the stark reality of PSR and just how crooked it is when you see Man City splash out 100 million on two players. I believe they've got a fantastic deal for Mamouche. I'm adamant they've overpaid for Kusanov, but they probably even themselves out a little bit. But yeah, the defeat. Obviously, the last time we spent time together was just before the Wolves game, wasn't it? And there was signs during that Wolves game that something like this, maybe not the scoreline at Bournemouth. The result didn't surprise me against Bournemouth, but the scoreline definitely did. I think the 3-0 against Wolves definitely flattered us. Quite a lot, actually. I don't think we defended well in that game, and that was exploited once more against Bournemouth, as we saw. But look, we need a reaction, and hopefully we can get one down at Southampton. And I was thinking earlier, actually, with a kind of cup semi-final second leg, and who knows, maybe a final on the horizon. The last time we were in this situation a couple of seasons ago, our league form did curtail somewhat around this time of year, but we can't afford that to happen this time around because we already had a bit of a slow start to the season by our own standards. And yeah, it is nice to see Anderson and Minteh do well, but it's not nice at the same time because you really wanted them to do well in a black and white shirt.
Yeah, it's frustrating, and you don't often get managers being so honest about the situation. Eddie Howe has been very clear he didn't want to sell either one of Anderson or Minteh, but there was no option left on the table for Newcastle United if indeed they were going to avoid a points deduction. And I've got a question on points deduction in a moment, but I just want to, on the point of Minteh and Anderson, it's even more frustrating because you look at the game against Bournemouth on Saturday, and what Eddie Howe needed was game changers off the bench, and he didn't have them. And there may be a point that Minteh and Anderson actually would have started that game, but if not, you would want to introduce them to change the game in Newcastle's favour. And it must be so frustrating for Eddie Howe, because he looks at his bench and thinks, I haven't got those options that can do that, while the two that would have been involved and could have potentially changed it in our favour are banging in the goals elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a good kind of core first team and a couple of good players when everyone's fully fit, of course, which they never are. These are the challenges of modern football. But, were everyone to be fit, you have options like Wilson and Barnes, Miley, Willock. Outside of that, you're a bit thin on the ground. And we talk about game changers and the fantastic run of form that Jacob Murphy's been on and Anthony Gordon to replace them. Have you got game changers to really come on and make things happen? Probably not. A couple of seasons ago, Howe deployed Isak on the left to put Wilson up top, of course, which was effective in some games. Other games, maybe not so much. But yeah, there was options there, but there's just a couple of injuries and you're down to the bare bones. That's not an excuse, by the way, because Bournemouth are exactly the same and they're dealing with it tremendously. And like one of the topics we're going to come on to is about Ange Postecoglou, and when these so-called big teams anyway need a change of manager, it's always like Thomas Frank that's mentioned, but why not Iriola of Bournemouth? He's doing a lot better job at Bournemouth than Frank is at Brentford, in my opinion. But Iriola's never really mentioned. He's built a fantastic squad there. My word, they were good. And it was a bit like Mike Bassett, England manager. If you've seen that film, after England lose to Mexico in the film, and they're all afterwards saying, bloody hell, those Mexicans were brilliant, weren't they? Hey, 3 cheers for Ramirez. It was a bit like that after Bournemouth on Saturday. But yeah, there's a reaction that's needed, and there have been signs of life from Southampton in the past couple of weeks, and it's a tougher game this Saturday than it would have been last month. So we need to get back on track quickly, because if we can't do it Saturday, all of a sudden we're at home to Fulham after that, and they made a mockery of us down at Craven Cottage earlier this season. I was there that day. It was an awful day, and then all of a sudden, bang, cup semi-final, second leg. It's not a foregone conclusion. You don't want to be heading into that in really poor form off the back of 2 or 3 sloppy defeats, because Arsenal on their day could easily turn up to St James's, score 2 goals in the first 10 minutes, and then you go in, oh, yeah, we're in a bit of bother here. So it's a key few weeks again, like we said, because we've always started playing catch up. Since before the season even started, really, and it comes back down to these deals for Anderson and Minteh. We were always a step behind.
Indeed, yeah, and you're right about the Bournemouth manager. I don't think he gets enough praise as he deserves, but also equally, I don't think leaving Bournemouth for, say, Tottenham would be an attractive proposition right now. I think I could never understand why Tottenham over recent years has been one of those jobs that people have gone for, because it's ran really, really badly. And we are going to talk about Tottenham later in the show, so we'll save those points for a wee while. But there's been a lot of talk, Sam, about PSR, and obviously no team was affected this time around. But in the previous season, you had Nottingham Forest, who were deducted 4 points for a £34 million breach. They appealed it. They lost the battle. They were deducted 4 points. They ended up surviving the drop quite comfortably in the end. And over recent weeks, particularly since the transfer window was open, there's been more and more talk from certain sections of the Newcastle United fan base that maybe Newcastle United, either in the summer just gone or this window, should spend and take the gamble with PSR, take the hit, if it means following a similar path to Forest, where in next season, the season after, they could be battling for second or third place in the Premier League. What are your thoughts on that?
I think in hindsight, I think the time to do that was probably last season. It's a different situation with Forest, because when they took their deduction last season, they weren't pushing for lucrative European money, which we are. Last season, I know we finished 7th, and we probably should be in the Conference League. Every other season we would be in the Conference League, wouldn't we? And we'd have been enjoying away days to Kazakhstan and whatnot. But in hindsight, maybe last season was the best time to take it because it was that difficult second season. And to maybe then finish, 8th, 9th, wouldn't have made a blind bit of difference, really, would it? And then we could have kicked on. I'm adamant if PSR weren't a thing and we would have already got a new centre-half, a goalkeeper, a striker, a right winger through the door, we'd be in a title battle this season with Liverpool. But, it's the reality of the situation is that PSR is just an absolute nightmare. I would be amazed if it doesn't get changed soon, especially now it's starting to affect teams like Manchester United, which who are a laughing stock at the moment, which again we'll come on to. But in terms of taking a points deduction, I don't think that's sensible this season when a potential Champions League finish is still on the cards. I don't think we'll get top 4. I think we have a real good chance of finishing 5th, which may be enough this season. The coefficients certainly suggest, at the moment at least, that 5th will be enough for Champions League football next season.
Would you take it, Sam? Because obviously, if they spent big this month and then they breached the PSR counts on June the 30th, it would be effective, the points deduction for next season. But of course, then the cycle of the PSR counts is much different to what it has been, the last couple of seasons. So I suppose you've got to take that into account. But would you take a big money signing now when a PSR breach, if it meant securing Champions League football for next season, and then you deal with any points deduction in the 25-26 campaign?
It's a tricky one, isn't it? It really is, because one signing, is that going to add significant enough squad depth that we can battle on all fronts? Probably not. We'd still need to reinforce the squad even further. But it was very interesting listening to Aaron talk on the podcast, much more intelligent than you, regarding PSR and how there is kind of scope to really kick on and spend this summer with that new kind of period beginning. And then 3 years ago where we had that 79 million loss goes off the books. We'll probably make a profit this year, won't we, as well, because of sponsorship deals and the lack of transfer activity. And the sale of Almiron, which now looks as though it's more likely than not. I am intrigued as to why we're not exploring a loan to buy this month. We've done it before with Lewis Hall. I'm very interested as to why that can't be the case, especially if Almiron is sold. I'm sure, Kubo's got a release clause at Sociedad. I'm sure there is a workaround where you could pay a little loan fee and then make up the most to meet his release clause for that deal to go through permanently in the summer, or whoever it is, whether it's Kubo, Akalush, Bakayoko, whoever. And I'll be amazed if Lloyd Kelly does leave. I've got to be honest, I can't see that one happening, to be fair. Doesn't matter what the Italian press think. But in terms of a points deduction, I don't know. It depends on it depends on how many points for a start. And, when you're at the top, every point is even kind of more hard-earned than it is at the bottom. So it's a tricky one, because that could be the difference between Champions League and Europa League, which financially is huge. So it's a really, I don't know. I'd kind of err on the side of caution when it comes to potentially breaching these stupid rules, because everything Newcastle have done since the takeover has been under the microscope. Even the sale of St. Maximin, which was, we all know, was too cheap. Considering what the fees being banded around for other players and what other teams are receiving for these players going to Saudi, I don't know. I'd always be very wary of wanting to take points deductions, because you just know that we're going to be the ones to be made an example of.
Let us know in the comments your thoughts. Would you risk a PSR points deduction if it meant spending this January, or even maybe a bit more in the summer? I think one thing is for certain, that it is not fit for purpose. There has to be some sort of restrictions, because you don't want to see teams spending everything they can, but it has to be better than what's in place at the moment. And we will have a very special episode coming out on Wednesday with our very own money man, David Powell, who is our football finance expert here at Reach PLC. He'll be answering all the questions on PSR, so do watch out for that. Now let's get on to Manchester United. And for those who aren't watching, I am rubbing my hands at this because this is an absolute joy to watch. Newcastle United get thumped 4-1 off Bournemouth, and it was awful. I was down in the dumps. You know, we all are after Newcastle get beaten. It ruins your weekend. It ruins your start to the week. But then there's always Manchester United to prop you up just that little bit, and it's a joy. And after the draw with Liverpool and the win against Southampton, you had commentators who I respect and who I actually really do enjoy listening to, coming out with the lines, "Oh, this is the turning point. This is the moment you look back in Ruben Amorim's Man United career," is when things started to go his way. When every man and his dog and woman knew that it just ain't going to be. You look at the way they play, devoid of confidence, devoid of organisation, devoid of discipline. They can't play a TUI system. They're just an absolute mess. And those commentators were wrong. The moment the words came out of their mouth, I just said, "Oh my God." But we knew it was going to happen. We knew. 3-1 to Brighton, they lost at the weekend. Ruben Amorim has lost 7 of his 15 games in charge. It's unbelievable, isn't it, Sam?
Is it unbelievable?
Scrap that. Unbelievable. Scrap it. Are you enjoying the meltdown? Are you enjoying watching?
Yeah, of course. Who isn't? Who isn't enjoying it? Of course, I know, and I know it's bitter. I'm normally of the attitude, "Don't be bitter, be better." But no, it is very funny. I don't have a shred of sympathy, much like they didn't when we were going through it with Mike Ashley. I kind of was aware of what he was like, Radcliffe. This is when at Nice. There was Nice fans all over social media going, he's not a saviour by any means, and that's where I will leave it when it comes to Radcliffe. But you've seen what he's done, because I know you get very clenched when I go off on one. What I'll say about Dan Ashworth is as well, I think he was very naive in thinking that he would have more control, more of a say at Manchester United than at Newcastle. I think that was a very naive move on his part, because there were all many Man United. There is now, since Alex Ferguson, who was the one-man band and had the final say on pretty much everything. Big football clubs like that have so many, too many cooks, and Barada and Jason Wilcox. It's all and the bike guy. There's just too much input, and then Ratcliffe, Glazers, whoever. There's just too many cooks spoiling the broth, and to think that he was gonna, have the final say on stuff was just so naive on his part. And he's now without a job and tending to his garden again, which for the most part is what he's been doing with his life for the past 3 years. So that's very funny. To be brutally honest, their recruitment over the years has been an absolute farce. They're so keen to put one of their academy graduates on a pedestal, going, this is the second coming. He is Super Jesus. Whether it's Adnan Januzaj or Scott McTominay, or who's doing very well in Serie A, by the way, or Garnacho, or Mainu, or Diallo now. Or Rashford back in the day. I mean, they're not the second coming. They're decent players. They're fine, but they're not world class. Januzaj was nothing. Rashford for me has never been world class. He's had good spells, but I don't think he's anything special. Garnacho's not for me. Kobe Mainu has real talent and potential, but they might need to sell him for PSR, which is very, very funny. And Diallo, he's the only one in a very poor team. And the fact that Højlund cost more than Isak as well is hilarious. The fact that they paid more than the release clause for Xerxes, who looks shocking, is hilarious. The fact that they spent so much money on De Ligt, who lost his place at Bayern Munich to Eric Dyer, is hilarious. The fact that they thought Mazraoui was the second coming, who couldn't get a sniff in the Bayern Munich first team, was hilarious. It's just clueless recruitment. There has been some exceptions, but for example, when Alex Ferguson brought players in, I always remember and go back to when they brought in Evra and Vidic, which were both in a January window. Come the summer, fans wanted them out. I remember this distinctly. And there was rumours that they were due for a quick exit because it looked like they hadn't settled and they couldn't adapt and whatever. They needed time. That's all. They needed time. They were in a right environment. They had good players around them. And then, look, Premier League legends, Vidic and Evra, would you agree?
I would.
So, you know, with the right environment and the right kind of squad mentality and atmosphere, you know, new players can thrive. And some of their recruitment has been good. I like the Ugarte signing. I like the Yoro signing. But, you know, Yoro in particular, very, very young. Can he just be thrust in there? Obviously stuttered because he had an injury at the start as well. Can he now just be chucked in there, go on, off you go, you know, play like you're a 26-year-old in your peak? No, it's ridiculous to expect that much so soon. He needs time. And so does Ugarte, really. Ugarte is a very, very good player. If we didn't have the midfield we have, I wouldn't say no to Ugarte at Newcastle, but he wouldn't get in our midfield now. That's the reality. Such is our quality in that area. But, you know, Christian Eriksen passed his sell-by date, really. Tremendous story that he's come back from that horrific incident, which almost cost him his life. But, you know, he's at the tail end of his career. Casemiro, wonderful respect for him. He was very good for a season there, but there's a reason Real Madrid let him go. They knew he probably only had one good season left in him. I wish it wasn't against us in the Carabao Cup final, that is, but c'est la vie. And the fact is, I just remember, I've never been so confident in all my life at going to Old Trafford and getting a result, which is just so un-Manchester United like. But it's hilarious. Amorim is feeling the pressure already. It's a completely different ballgame than managing Sporting Lisbon, where he had some top talent. He had some top young talent at Sporting Lisbon, some very, very good players indeed. But, you know, it's the limelight is being thrust upon you from Sporting Lisbon to Man United. It's a whole different ballgame, which he's finding out now, maybe to his detriment.
What do you make of his comments? Because a few weeks ago, he was talking about being in a relegation fight. Sunday or Saturday, whenever day it was, they lost to Brighton. He said, this is the worst team in the club's history. Now, I have to say, looking from the outside in, that's not the approach that I would be taking. I don't think that's going to get the desired reaction from the players nor the supporters. I think that's a big gamble from his point of view to be saying this, and I think it may well backfire. What are your thoughts on his comments?
I think it's a bit naive, and I think it's a bit too honest, because he's not wrong. It is the worst. It's definitely the worst Man United side in Premier League history.
You don't see it in the public, though, do you? It's like I look at Eddie Howe, and Eddie Howe's approach for the large part, I think, gets full praise, full backing from nearly every Newcastle United fan. There are little elements where you go, come on, Eddie, just be honest, call it for what it is. But then you look at why he's saying what he's saying, and you know, behind closed doors, he's not going in there and saying, we played all right here. He's going in there and he's pulling players up and saying that was a mistake or we didn't play to our standards. But in front of the camera, he's calm and he's collective and he's not throwing anyone under the bus. And I get sometimes the frustration is there, but actually I think that's probably a better approach than throwing your entire team under the bus, because that's just not going to work. And that's going to come back and bite Amorim on the behind, because how are players going to react? I mean, how were they walked into training on Monday after hearing the comments that they are the worst side in Manchester United's Premier League history? It's in a bizarre take on it.
The thing is, as well, the longer this goes on, the longer it's going to take to sort. And because PSR is at the point now, because they've wasted so many hundreds of millions of pounds on shambolic recruitment, they may well be in a position where they need to sell Mainu and get a good fee for Rashford and sell Garnacho and, do all that, which is on the one hand is very funny, but they need a complete overhaul, which then new players will need the time to bed in. So this is a 2-3 year project to get them back anywhere near challenging for a league title minimum.
Do you feel sorry for him, or do you think he's also got his part to play because he's sticking to his principles, he's sticking to his system of trying to play three at the back when he probably hasn't got the personnel to do so? But he's been very clear he's not shifting from his style of play, which was so successful at Sporting Lisbon. But I look at it and I compare it to maybe Vincent Kompany with Burnley. He had his way of playing, but it was never going to work. It was never going to keep Burnley in the Premier League. And look, I'm also
got him the Bayern Munich job, though, didn't it?
You know, but the point being, I mean, yes, okay, but that in itself is a little bit bizarre. But the point being is that for now, does Amorim need just to say this isn't working and to get to the end of the season in a respectable position? I'm just going to play to the strengths of the team, and then come the summer, we'll sell X, Y, Z. We'll maybe bring in one or two, and then we'll work on adapting my style. Or do I just continue down this road, even though it's not working? And we'll deal with whatever the consequences are.
No, I think he's right in sticking to his guns, because he's probably looking at his squad now, thinking, right, who can adapt? Who wants to go on this journey with us now? Who wants to be part of this squad? Who wants to be part of the rebuild? Who can be adaptable and show a good attitude and work hard, because there's not enough players working hard in that Manchester United side. Just the vast sums of money they've wasted. Like, I'll repeat again, Højlund costs more than Isak. On what planet? Who signed that deal off?
What about Onana? You haven't even mentioned him yet. He's awful.
Yeah, he is. He is.
Just
there's loads of Xerxes awful, but Onana, he asked Man United fans and they'd keep him.
£46 million. £46 million, and at times it looks like he couldn't catch a cold.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy, isn't it? Some of the names have been linked to Man United. I like the look, and some are on my special list as well, Andrew. They're after a left back called Patrick Dorgu, apparently, who is on my list of good young players. But we've got Lewis Hall, so there's no reason for him to be mentioned for us, because we're sorted for the future with left back. You would hope, anyway. I don't want to see many more Lewis Hall performances than that of against Bournemouth, but he was by no means the only one, of course. But yeah, he needs. Again, he needs 2 or 3 windows to completely overhaul and buy the players that suit his system. Whether he brings a few over from Lisbon as well. There's some very good centre halves he had there. Diamande, who I want to be the one really to be the long-term replacement for Fabian Schär. Inacio as well is a superb centre half, Portuguese international. Gyökeres is there as well. They need a striker, a reasonably priced one as well. I don't think he's quite that top level. I appreciate his goal record is astounding, and he was very good in the Championship, but I don't quite think he's right at the top level, in my opinion.
Well, he's perfect for Manchester United then, isn't he?
Well, exactly, because at the moment, and they have been for a couple of years now, they're a mid-table side. And that's the be-all and end-all.
What do you make of, look, this is just my opinion, and people will maybe disagree with me, but there seems to be a real urge from certain broadcasters, and maybe not the broadcasting companies, but I think certain broadcasters, to see Man United do well, and you can hear it in their voice, or you can hear it by the way that they talk about them, and it's just really, really bizarre.
Well, no, because you look at who these broadcasters pundits are.
Yeah, but let's, for instance,
so it's always pointed towards the teams in the Northwest.
Yeah, we all know the coverages, yeah. But like, for instance, I think Gary Neville is absolutely brilliant. I think he calls it as it is. And yes, he gets excited every now and then when something good happens to Manchester United. But I think I'm not actually targeting him in this opinion. I'm targeting other folk that I'm not going to mention because it's unfair. But I think Gary Neville is kind of the example of actually how to handle it in many ways.
In what sense?
In the sense that he's not trying to paint a false picture of how it is. He's always honest and open about it. I don't think he gets too far ahead of himself. I didn't hear him He wasn't one of the people after the draw against Liverpool or the winner of Southampton who was claiming this was a turning point. He was very cautious, about things. I think for Man United legend, he actually handles it quite well. I know he gets a lot of stick. Can he be unbiased? But I don't think he's actually that bad. It's other folk who I think want to paint this. They want this Hollywood story of Amarin coming in and turning it around, and it just annoys us. There are other big stories this season that are actually happening right now. The Bournemouth story, for example, that deserve huge amounts of praise and focus. But as soon as Man United grab a lucky win against Southampton, it's suddenly, they're on for a title challenge. We had it under Ten Hag consistently. He'd go on a massively bad run. He'd go on and win 3 or 4 games, and suddenly they were back, and then it'll fall away again. Absolutely crazy. The narrative is just utterly bizarre.
Yeah, but it gets views.
True.
And that's what it's about, isn't it? Whether it's views on the telly box or whether it's clicks on social media, and it gets views. Even the people going, "Why are you constantly on about Man United?" They're still engaging with it. So that's why I couldn't agree more. They're a mid-table side and don't deserve any more recognition on the television than that of Crystal Palace.
Well, of our next topic, not Crystal Palace, but Tottenham. Beautiful segue in there, because we are going to now talk about another struggling side who I think would have had ambitions for the Champions League, and it is Tottenham. Just 8 points from the drop, just 7 points from their last 30. Is Ange Postecoglou on the rope, Sam?
Yeah, I think so. Bookie's favourite to be the next manager sack now, which will come to no shock to anyone, really. Yes, he's had a lot of injuries to contend with, missing a lot of key players as well, particularly in defence and midfield, and Van der Veen and Vicario, and and in midfield as well. The kind of attacking third has been okay, but Solanke's no Harry Kane, is he? Let's face it. He's big under pressure. There is cracks starting to show. I thoroughly enjoyed Daniel Levy being papped by the TV cameras the other day at Goodison, wasn't it? During their 3-2 defeat. But it goes to show. I mean, Spurs, the tremendous sense of entitlement that they hold. I mean, Spurs are where they are when I was growing up. They were a mid-table side. They weren't, and I think they were, more often than not, they were in the bottom half of the league than the top half of the league. It's only since the days of Harry Redknapp and whatnot, they were kind of resurgent, and then Champions League regulars for a little while. Obviously got to the final as well under Poch, which was a tremendous achievement. But that's probably about as good as you could ever hope for if you're Spurs. Yes, they could still win the Carabao Cup. They hold the advantage against Liverpool. It would be unthinkable for us to lose against a Tottenham Hotspur in a final, surely.
You've got to get there first, Samuel.
I couldn't agree more, but the bookies suggest that. Well, the odds suggest that it's going to be a Newcastle-Liverpool final, but look, like there's a long way to go yet, as we know. But I can see with another defeat at the weekend, that would probably be it for Ange. I can see them hiring. Do you know who I could see them hiring?
Go on.
Ten Hag.
That would be an interesting appointment. I can't see that.
Do you remember when Villas-Boas got sacked from Chelsea early doors, and then all of a sudden he went to Spurs?
Right.
I think that's a bit of. I think that could be a bit of a potential repeat going on there. I think because who else could they get? No one in the top half, like your Areola. Is he really going to leave that project at Bournemouth, who they have got some decent financial backing now with their new owners, haven't they? It's not like the Bournemouth that Eddie Howe left, who come from League Two and were tremendous underdogs. That's not really the case with Bournemouth anymore. With Thomas Franklin, Brentford potentially, but I wouldn't want to be going to Spurs, really.
No, it's very chaotic, and they have they've got a Europa League game on Thursday, and they face Leicester at home on the Sunday. So a big week.
Well, there you
for
go.
them.
Leicester are as good as down under Van Nistelrooy. So if they do Spurs on the weekend, you would say that's it for Postecoglou.
You'd have more sympathy for Postecoglou with this injury crisis because, of course, we suffered it at Newcastle last season, and he
Yeah.
was actually very complimentary towards Newcastle this time kind of last year. But his attitude is absolutely honking. I mean, he, for me, is my most hated Premier League manager right now. I just cannot
Really?
stand his attitude. He's so disrespectful to broadcasters who are just
Well,
doing their job. I mean, we all saw the interview after the Everton defeat on Sunday, and he was asked, totally fair and balanced. It was a fair question whether it was a familiar story in terms of what his team had done wrong in terms of another defeat. 7 points out of a possible 30. That is a fair and balanced question. And he responded with, great way to start an interview, and then didn't make a single bit of eye contact with the interviewer, head down, so disrespectful. Like, he's like a petulant child, and it's not the first time this season. Honestly, I would love to know if you're a Spurs fan and you've stumbled across this video. Let me know in the comment. And I'm not trying to be on the wind up. I genuinely want to know what you think of Ange Postecoglou's attitude, especially when things are going wrong. Because Sam, Sir Alex Ferguson was a great example. When things were going wrong, he used the deflection tactic. He would pick up on the tiniest of little things, whether it was a referee decision, wearing the wrong kit, whatever it was, and he would
yeah,
use it as
Mourinho would do the
deflection.
same.
Yeah, brilliant, right? This isn't deflection. This is just a very, very disrespectful man who, look, who knows he's under pressure, who's feeling the pressure, he's on the ropes. It's sad to see in many ways, but there's no need to act the way he's been acting the past few weeks to broadcasters who are just asking the right question. It's totally uncalled for.
Yeah, I get that. A couple of points. I mean, this time last year he was a media darling, wasn't he? Everyone loved Big Ange, mate. I think the report. I can't remember who the reporter was, but I know the interview you're referring to. The question was fine. I think it was the comment at the start with it being so familiar story. I think that could have probably, on another day, you probably wouldn't have led with that.
Why?
I think I could have been because it wasn't part of the question. He could have phrased it better. I think the question was fine. Absolutely agree with that.
There was
But,
nothing wrong with using the term familiar story because it is a familiar story, and that was the core of
no,
his question.
I think he could have said, "And is it becoming a familiar story?" Then that would have been done. But to say "and familiar story," blah 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 blah. That I can see why he took issue with it, but when you go off on one like he did, and he did the same. He did the same after we beat them as well. When everything's fair and balanced, blah 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 blah. But she said about 7 or 8, 9 times, didn't he, in the post-match presser? Those are when the cracks appear, and a sacking isn't far away. We saw it with Gary O'Neill earlier this season when it wasn't us anymore; it was them. When discussing the players, it was them, the players, them, not us. It's not we anymore. It's them and me. So that when that starts to happen, it's curtains, and I don't think we're far away from that now.
But interestingly, many people would say Ange's comments, Gary O'Neill's comments, are not too dissimilar to what Ruben Amorim's saying at Manchester United. In terms of throwing your team under the bus, obviously O'Neill made quite clear it was him versus them, which was a very stupid thing to do. But is Ruben Amorim under a bit of pressure? If this run continues.
No, because he's new, isn't he? He hasn't had. I mean, he hasn't had a transfer window yet. We're in a transfer window, of course, but just PSR has killed everything to do with transfer windows, hasn't it? Let's face it. There's not many deals going on unless you're Man City or Aston Villa, even, who it may well come. I think they're gambling, to be honest. I know they want rid of Leon Bailey and Diego Carlos, but I don't know. I still think they may have to sell, particularly if they don't qualify for Champions League again, which I don't think they will. Maybe the sale of John Duran to West Ham, which is just blue sky thinking and the tallest order from West Ham's point of view. Why they would think Duran would leave Villa to go to West Ham United, I do not know. I know it was close in the summer, and he was even posted on his Instagram with the hammer sign, which was very orcs. But, with the benefit of how this season's panning out and Villa having a tremendous time in the Champions League, they go to Monaco tonight, which would have been a lovely away day for us, wouldn't it, last season? Really trip to Monaco. Oh, yes, please. It was mightily cold in Dortmund when we went. I had a great time, but it was bitter. I think when it comes to Amorim, he'll get the summer at least.
Interesting. Let us know in the comments. And I know as well, Sam, you want to talk about actually Duran and I'm guessing as well one or two other players when it comes to crazy transfer bids. Maybe Wissa is another one that you might want to highlight. I know you've been particularly up in arms about this.
I think the Wissa one makes sense for Forest. If you cast your mind back to the summer, Wolves bid for Wissa. Wolves were going all in on trying to sign Wissa late in the day, which again would be another one that maybe Wissa himself would have looked back on and think, dodged a bullet there. Brentford are in a bit of limbo. They're obviously doing well and almost establishing themselves as a top 10 side. But I just get the feeling they'll never really kick on to that next level and challenge for Europe because of the depth of teams that are in there. I don't think Brentford are going to be ones to break into that mould. They could do. Who would have seen it from Nottingham Forest, of course, but with the likes of Wissa and Burma was obviously attracting a lot of attention from teams up and down the country as well. The Forest one's an interesting one. Do they have money to spend? They had some dealings with us in both teams avoiding the PSR thing. They probably got the better end of the deal, really, getting Elliot Anderson for what, net 15 mil. With the Vlachodimos thing, which is still bizarre to this day, because how will not have him one bit. I think it'd be a shrewd signing, and but an interesting one, especially as Chris Wood's doing the business for them. Whether they just need that bit of squad depth, obviously a completely different type of player as well to that of Chris Wood. So that one makes more sense to me though than West Ham trying to get John Duran, which is just balmy.
Personally, if I was Newcastle United and Wissa was available for 25, 28 million pounds, and the money was there, and you could find the numbers, I wouldn't turn that down for Newcastle United. I think as a backup goes, say Alexander Isak, he fits the mould.
No. It's 28. It doesn't fit the mold of our recruitment. You're never going to recoup anything. He's not. I don't think it represents. And of course, he's not available for 25 million. It's going to cost you way more than that. I'm not saying this is not a good player. He is. He's very good, and he's on fire. He's having a fantastic season. But a deal for Mbermo makes a lot more sense than Wissa, because Mbermo, despite the look of him, he's a lot younger than what he looks, Mbermo. So that deal makes more sense than this. I can't see why anyone would. I don't see why. It doesn't fit with our current transfer strategy.
Well, there we go. Let us know in the comments what you think. And just finally, just to sign off, we have to talk about James Trafford's double penalty save down the road at the Stadium of Light. And look, Newcastle United are very, very interested in him being priced out of a return for a move from this January. Probably will go back in the summer, although it will cost them a lot more than the £20 million that they thought they had done last summer. And there's always a bit of debate about whether James Trafford is the man that Newcastle United need between the sticks. I think personally he'd do a fantastic job. And I tell you what, Sam, a double penalty save against Sunderland is not a bad way to thaw any uncertainty amongst fans about your potential move to Tyneside.
Such a tremendous attitude shift, wasn't there, during that game regarding Trafford? Because a lot of fans I know weren't overly keen. myself included, not overly keen. And now all of a sudden, James Trafford's a Newcastle legend before he's even signed. Yeah, great fun. Of course, he's not the only goalkeeper to save 2 championship penalties in the same game. Carl Darlow did it. But yeah, again, it was a lot of fun to watch, wasn't it? Because obviously denied Sunderland a victory, but the derby could be back next season. Still a long way to go, but yeah, James Trafford's an interesting one. Not a bad goalkeeper, but if I had the choice, I'd sooner get Chevalier from Lille, as I mentioned last week. Different level altogether than James Trafford. I'm still not wholly convinced, and I'm not blinded by, a penalty save against the big rivals. I mean, if he signs, he obviously gets my full support. But I don't know. I think there are just better options there for the money we'd have to pay.
Well, there we go again. Let us know in the comments your thoughts on James Trafford. Thank you very much for tuning in to the first episode of the Mulliner and Musgrove Show. I hope you've enjoyed the 45 minutes or so of conversation that we've had. We'll be back next week, hopefully, with a host of new items to talk about. I think it'll be a busy week in the world of football. I can already see certain things that we can chat about if the weekend doesn't bring us some more excitement. But I'm sure it will do. Thank you to Sam for popping on to the podcast. Thank you to you guys for watching and listening. Hit thumbs up, hit subscribe, leave us a rating and review as well. And for myself and Sam, we will see you guys next Tuesday.